Welcome to Boxing Squared on Patreon. Thank you for joining me here. I mean that. Your support is directly helping with the continued creation of content for the Boxing Squared YouTube channel. Big ups, and I'll be here with a new video every Sunday on something I've been thinking about in the world of heavyweight boxing. And this week, maybe no surprise, there's a lot of drama going on between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. Whyte wants more than apparently he's going to get. There's a request coming from the Fury side for him to get 20% of a purse split, 80-20 to Fury. But there are questions about all of this that I think are going unasked and certainly not answered. And what I mean by that is, what are the actual rules? What are the rules? Because it's been widely reported that the interim champion in a fight with the full champion is due 45%. But is that actually the case? Because I went looking on the WBC's website for the rules and regulations, what is the actual go? And I found something different. And I was partway through making a video, and then someone sent me another set of rules and regulations, and seemingly they are also available online. So the WBC is actually creating a lot of confusion here. They're not clearing anything up. There seems to be a lot of narratives that are sort of winding their way around, which it's hard to unpick what's actually fact from fiction, because the rules that people are citing are from 2009, and the rules and regulations that are up on the WBC website, the ones that are easily accessible in the section where it's, you know, rules and regulations and other documents, are from 2019. So there does seem to be a lot of confusion about really what's what. So I'll just start a screen recording so you can see what I'm talking about and how we got where we got to in terms of my little investigation. So see here, so this is the Daily Star story that sort of set things up, saying set for huge purse split as WBC finally confirmed deal for Dillian Whyte fight. And going through it, it sort of talks through a lot of stuff that we'd already heard, that Tyson Fury was going to be due 80%. That's what his promoters, Frank Warren, and also Top Ranks Bob Arum, had put forward. They'd said this in the media. Remembering at the time of this article coming out a couple of days ago, it was 3 weeks into the free negotiating period. So that was, what, December the 8th or 9th, and this came out on, what was it, the 30th of December. And this story says that there's going to be a purse bid on the 11th of January. It says that the decision will be a huge blow to mandatory challenger Whyte, who was demanding a 45% cut. And see, there are a few things with the story I take issue with, because where are the quotes? Where's the actual sort of evidence for any of the statements here? So it says he's going to get 80%. There is going to be a purse bid. It said that Whyte had been looking for 45% as a mandatory challenger. Well, the rules in the WBC's, at least the latest rules, the 2019 rules, say that Dillian Whyte cannot be a mandatory challenger if he's the interim champion. But there's a shocking lack of actual reportable facts, and I was thinking about this in recent days, and because it's the Daily Star, I mean, you can draw an inference that this could have all come from Frank Warren, because he does, you know, often give quotes to them, has had columns in the Daily Star, all that sort of thing. So the tightness between Warren and the Daily Star, maybe it lends some credibility to some of this being true. But there are questions about what could happen with the purse bid, because Whyte's taking arbitration. Can they go into a purse bid situation without a split being definitively known? Or is this a case where they're going to say, okay, it's 80-20 for now, that could get changed in Whyte's arbitration? And we'll come to that a little bit later as well. But so here's the WBC website. So all the different documents, and it's also in Spanish and all that sort of stuff as well. But rules and regulations. So you click that, comes up with this document. But one of the key things in these rules, which says it's from 2019, the 14th of May 2019, interim championship rule. So it talks about a fight can happen between a champion and the interim champion where one is actually occurs, etc. In its sole discretion, the WBC shall subsequently determine the timing and terms of any bout between a champion and interim champion to determine a sole champion in the division, provided, however, that an interim champion shall never be deemed a mandatory challenger or entitled to a greater share of proceeds of any purse offer beyond that of a challenger without specific prior written order to that effect from the WBC president or his designee. So what it is effectively saying is, one, Dillian Whyte, who is an interim champion, can never be considered as a mandatory. It's champion versus champion as the WBC sees it. So all the talk about what a mandatory could be due in terms of a split is actually not applicable in this sort of situation according to the WBC. So it is saying that also that the timing and terms of the bout is up to the WBC. So what that also means is that the terms also includes the money side. And when you go through the WBC's 2019 rules and regulations, looking for 45%, the sort of figure that's been thrown out there is what Whyte is owed as an interim champion. It's not in there. So there's only 4 references of 45%, but nothing specific to what an interim champion would be owed. But there is another set of rules that is floating around, and we'll come to that. But Whyte is currently taking arbitration, and this is something he has to do as part of, if he believes that there's some sort of grievance, as part of the WBC's rules and regulations. So he's actually following things to the letter of their rules and regulations, and that it has to be settled exclusively by mandatory arbitration before the Court of Arbitration for Sport, pursuant to yada yada yada. So Whyte obviously sensing that he's going to get underdone on the money front, and whether you believe he's worth that or not, I mean, he's got a right to try as a prize fighter, as Tyson Fury is also, their end is trying to do, the Bob Arum, Frank Warren side of things, trying to get as much for their man as possible. So they're putting forward 80-20, and also Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte is saying, no, I want more. So he's initiated some action in the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But the question is, where's all this come from? Because there is a second set of rules floating around, and I've heard these quoted a number of times on a number of different channels. I couldn't find it myself online, but people have versions of these and said that they could find these online. So maybe it's a matter of a search engine thing, I don't know. But here is the other set of rules, the older set of rules, the 2009 version of the WBC's rules and regulations, which does stipulate 55% to the champion, 45% to the interim champion in the event of such an bout between the two. But then it goes on to say, look, it could be less than that. So the Board of Governors may, in its discretion, by majority vote, modify the division of purse offer proceeds between the boxers in a purse offer in unusual or special cases, like the consideration of outstanding marketing value of one of the boxers. The modification of the split will be limited to 3 categories: 70-30, 60-40, 55-45 for the champion and challenger, respectively, except in the most exceptional circumstances, in which the split may be modified to 50-50. So that does seem to say, you know, the 45% thing, but it actually could be less. And let's face it, the WBC, through their rules and regulations, doesn't matter which version you want to look at, the more updated one, the older one, they give themselves plenty of outs all over the place. And effectively, their Board of Governors can make it anything. So there is confusion about what actually is the case here, and the WBC has not been quick to sort this out. But what we have been hearing from Dillian Whyte's side through Eddie Hearn is that they're saying 45% is what he is owed. He's been saying, and this is an article from DAZN, the purses are almost secondary to the fight being ordered. The interim champion can receive up to 45% of a purse split. And I believe that the purse should be at those kinds of levels. We've seen Top Rank talking about 20% to Whyte, which is outrageous. And just to be consistent, another DAZN article which quotes Frank Warren, in his mind, he thinks he's getting 45%. In our mind, it's 20% based on the previous purses that were lodged under WBC regulations. And these sorts of comments, so Warren is not actually saying that Whyte's entitled to 45%. He just says he thinks he's getting 45%, but what are they actually quoting? What are they looking at? Are they looking at the more recent version, which is on the WBC website, which basically says it's up to the WBC to determine the timing and terms of a bout between the champion and interim champion to determine a sole champion, which effectively means they can set up anything they'd like in terms of the conditions, and Whyte will just have to eat it. And obviously, sort of with that sort of staring down the barrel of that gun in terms of 80-20, you know, which is why he's done what he's done. But this may lead him to actually waiting, getting a title shot at a later point against the WBC champion, and Tyson Fury fighting someone else in the interim. But no one has been talking about this, that there's different versions of rules floating around which have been quoted and cited, and the rules that are actually on the WBC's website don't say what most people are saying. And the WBC has not taken it upon itself to actually clear this up. I haven't heard Mauricio Suleiman actually saying anything definitively. And perhaps that's not unsurprising, because you could look at this whole arbitration coming up, and the WBC legal advisors may have advised Suleiman, don't say anything publicly. Suleiman's never been quiet before to say different things about Whyte, his situation, what Whyte wants, and what the WBC sees the situation as. But I can understand right now, if there is some legal action, which this is a formal legal action, the arbitration, why he wouldn't be saying much. But these two different rules floating around, it makes it, or two different versions of the rules and regulations floating around, which is actually accurate. And if this other one from 2009 is still online, still accessible, and still being passed off as the WBC rules and regulations, is this the loophole for Dillian Whyte and Eddie Hearn to exploit? That's the question, or it's a question. Or is those rules which people are quoting left, right and centre superseded by the ones which clearly were updated and, 10 years later than the other one, dated 14th of May 2019. So I wanted to sort of bring up this issue because no one's been questioning the rules. I mean, I went looking for this and tried to find out what was what, because it was unclear what the situation was, and it's become even less clear to me what the actual rules are. And if it is not the case of 45%, if that's just a myth, well, the WBC should be saying something, because at the moment you've got one side pressing it, but even Tyson Fury's side, they're not really saying anything of note to discredit it either. What do you make of it?